Spoilerin time, folks. This is the part of the Cordkillers experience where we talk about all of the great shows that we just spent all this time trying to find. We're going to talk about Picard, Star Trek Picard, episode 5 of season 3, The Mandalorian, episode 3 of season 3, and the first episode of the new 3rd season of Ted Lasso. I'm Bryce Castillo, joined with Brian Brushwood.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. As it's always been, just the two of us.
That's right.
Which one are we going to start with?
Let's get started with Ted Lasso, season 3, episode 1, Smells Like Mean Spirit. We're back, and the new season has started, and everyone has said AFC Richmond are going to be stinkers at the back of the pack, get relegated again, and Ted Lasso doesn't seem that bothered.
If Tom was here, I would jump in immediately, but instead, you know that I'm all in on everything about this series. I would love to hear your take on where we are at the beginning of season 3.
Yeah, we're setting a lot of the table, right? We're Ted just spent a great summer with his kid. We don't need to see any of that. We're back at the pitch. We're back in the Premier League. We don't need to worry much about that. Everyone says that they're not going to do so good, and now we are building this dynamic between Ted and who is our villain?
Nate.
Between him
Nathan.
And
Nate
Nathan.
the Great, as Ted would call him.
Yeah. And it's almost a little corny the way that story goes. Don't you feel?
Yes. I'm holding back. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
You almost tricked me into.
Okay. Sorry. So that was a little corny, but that's in the spirit. That's in the Ted Lasso lane. That's the lane that the show operates in. So, overcoming cynicism and punching with banana cream pies is Ted Lasso as heck.
So,
do you want to just take that first?
Yeah. Well,
start with that.
I don't know who said it, but something. Nobody ever went broke by keeping it simple. I don't even know if I'm saying it correctly.
No one got fired betting on IBM.
Yeah, correct. That kind of thing, right?
Sure.
This show is a cartoon at this point, and I'm 100% here for it. It is like so on the nose. People are talking about whether or not there'll be a 4th season. Maybe it makes enough money that they invent a 4th season. But meanwhile, otherwise, it's very simple. It was Star Trek or Star Wars: A New Hope, Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back, and then Star Wars: Return of the Jedi. Right? The 2nd season I wasn't in love with but what it did was it very, very successfully took a character that I liked very much and believably made him into a heel.
Innate.
Is it called a heel turn? Is that what it is?
Yeah, you got it.
Wrestling, yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
But I can't stop thinking about Star Wars as I watch this very first episode, where first of all, magically Nathan has turned totally gray. He
was on the way last season, but okay.
This again, that was his transition, right?
Because we do have a small time jump. We skipped the summer. We skipped the off season.
Right. And then so he's giving a speech in full on Sith mode. And again, talking about Star Wars parallels, there's a Sith Lord in the ex-husband of what's her name?
Oh, sure, Rupert.
Rupert
a team owner.
is empowering him. He draws his power from his self-loathing and his hatred of himself, where he's spitting on himself in the mirror and all that stuff. He
uses that power. He uses it. He redirects that energy.
Exactly, right?
Okay. Very highly productive.
Our hero, so he gives a speech with a giant red background behind him.
The press conference. The presser, yeah.
Exactly, as a Sith Lord. Meanwhile, our heroes, of course, what you want is for our heroes to be low status. They're so low status that
everyone,
Ted Lasso decides to take everybody into the sewer.
Yes, the sewer.
And then at that point,
how did you feel about the sewer? Because I feel like they could have gone either further into the sewers I don't know. Is it a real? I wouldn't go on like a sewer tour.
I mean, the
I would not
only
do a
thing
sewer.
worse than being in the sewer is having Twitter trending showing you getting into the sewer, which they did, right?
Yeah.
And
Well, that leads us to the story about Ted, right? The idea that, well, is Ted worried enough? Is Ted, because we did just see, we kind of slogged through season 2 where they were in this lower tier and still struggling to, would they get promoted? Would they get back to the Premier League?
And we also have this kind of nascent, kind of impotent romance with him learning to talk to his therapist and possibly have a connection there or whatever. And they've left that a mystery. But it's very, very clear that Nathan derives all of his power from self-loathing and hatred of himself and anger of all, Sith Lord stuff. And then meanwhile, it's clear that the Richmond team hasn't come together. And then there's that moment where Rebecca says, like, she makes it clear, like, I am hurting because I don't like what my ex-husband is doing to me. Will you please be my hero? And the way he does it in almost a punk rock puppy dog style, Ted Lasso just goes on a 10-minute self-deprecating riff showing his belly so hardcore that they do there's an echo because at first we see Nate and we see Rebecca get upset. She slams down the laptop.
And Nate does the same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's so
It's very good.
Look, all of this very elementary, very by the numbers. It's paint by numbers. All of this is paint by numbers. Also, I'm totally here for all of this.
Yeah.
It's great.
It's hard to mess this up. It's hard to mess this up at this point. It's a great cast. The story's fine. And it doesn't seem like they're going to take it too long. I was glad to get a little bit of a refresher. I'm ready to be surprised in the way that the show has surprised me before about their ability to handle these characters emotionally and with personality and in an interesting, humane way. We still have Jamie Tart. Jamie Tart is like a lovable character now.
Is the most lovable he's ever been.
The most.
I'm like, I kind of just want to give him a hug right now. like he's like, hey guys, don't worry about it.
You got it.
He suddenly became an Australian Shepherd or something. Like he's a golden retriever of a guy. I mean, it's great.
Yeah. It's great. I mean, you mentioned the cartoonishness of the show, and I think he's a good example of it, right? We had someone who was like the cocky guy in the first season to the kind of
just utterly contemptible, awful.
And now he's completely turned. He's had a face turn. We love Jamie Tart now. I don't know that. I wonder if he's going to be Flanderized or not. That's the question with becoming cartoony. Does it become Flanderized where you're a representation of this character, where you become the memes? Jamie Tart becomes the meme.
It felt a little bit in this first episode like they were intentionally not showing him very much, and that suggests to me that maybe there's more to it. They also kind of introduced out of nowhere that Roy Kent and Keeley are,
breaking up,
are drifting away from each other, and then meanwhile they're mediators / like basically the kid, of course, knows everything. Is like, yeah, no, seems like you guys are making excuses. Seems like you guys should just work this out.
Yeah.
and
maybe they will.
Yep.
Maybe they will. It'll be fascinating because I think that's the type of topic that Ted Lasso has surprised me with how they've decided to go in previous seasons.
Yeah.
That's a story I'm looking forward to. Stop it.
So real quick, if you asked me 3 years ago how this was going to end up, I would tell you that it's going to be exactly the way Ted Lasso said it would be. First, we're going to come back, then we're going to win the whole dang thing. Knowing that there are hundreds of millions of dollars on the line, are they not going to do that, or do you think it goes exactly the way it should go?
I mean, I want Ted Lasso to win, right? Ted is such a sweet guy. You want him and his team to win.
But also, he would totally handle not winning, and that would be kind of a celebration.
Right.
In
Like, how is
the real prize was the friends we made along the way, right?
Right.
I mean,
if you go past the wants and the nuts, if you go past all the wants, you realize, like, how would they ever win? They just got promoted out of relegation. This is a lower tier team. Like, it's not like they're gonna become teen movie great by the end of this.
Yeah,
it's gonna be more realistic in that sense. They're gonna get third or fourth or something, and it'll be better than what they could have gotten.
Or they'll be mid-season. We'll figure out that there's some kind of betting line that is very very low. That all they have to do is get a but. We
got to not get relegated. They got to get 19th. Right?
Spoiler: Rudy didn't win the game in the movie Rudy. You know, he just showed up, and everybody clapped for the fact that he showed up. Maybe it's a Rudy story. I don't know.
Yeah. Any other thoughts here on Ted Lasso 301?
No, it's great.
Pretty good.
There are so many great little moments, like when Keely, the moment the door closes, she bursts into tears and said, "I'm sorry, I haven't booked any time to just cry, and now I've double booked you." It's great. It's a great show.
Yeah. I say the only plot hole, and I hope someone gets fired for this, is why does Higgins ask, "Hey, what's that on your shirt?" and then like immediately like reveal, oh, he's got the exact same eyeliner stain on his shirt. I thought that was I thought that was a little goofy to be like, "What's that?" "Oh, I've got the exact same thing."
Wait, that was specifically him saying, basically the message as I perceived it was, yeah, that's how Keely be like, is that she cries on your shoulder.
Yeah.
Oh, I see you have, what's that? You're like, oh, it's Keely crying on me. I wouldn't have known that. Yeah. Shows his, you know.
Okay. I'm fine. I'll buy it. Well, that was Ted Lasso Season 3, Episode 1. Let's talk about The Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 3, The Convert. Brian, as someone who's been watching the season of The Mandalorian, how did this episode play for you?
Bryce?
Yes.
You and I both know that I am a big fan of Andor.
Yes, I believe that you enjoy that program quite a bit. In fact, was that the one that had Mandalorian in it, or was that Boba Fett?
No, that was
Doesn't matter.
Book of Boba Fett had some Mandalorian in it. Yeah. I hardly remember it. All I know is that I definitely watched all of Andor 4 times.
Okay. Did you watch this episode 4 times? How many times did you watch this episode?
I went in like I have been stealing myself. Like, in the beginning, there was The Mandalorian, and it was good. And then it got less good.
On the second.
Then I started watching The Book of Boba Fett, and it was not very good.
Bad.
But then The Mandalorian showed up, and I liked it a little bit better. And then Andor happened, and Andor is canonically in the book of Brian Brushwood the best thing ever.
It's not how canon works, but okay.
Bar none, right?
Sure.
So as a result, because I now have a new favorite best friend, Andor, when Mandalorian came back, I'm like, how am I going to feel about the Mandalorian? Episode 1, episode 2, I'm like, yeah, I think I don't like it anymore. And then this episode, they seem to have mixed a little bit of Andor in my Mandalorian, and I got really confused. It's more cartoonish than Andor.
Okay, I didn't finish watching.
It was smarter than I expected, and I'll explain. But tell me what you thought.
Well, I was confused, I guess. I've not been watching The Mandalorian. I watched the first episode. I didn't even watch the first episode of the season. I just jumped blind into this because we knew Tom wasn't going to be here, and I didn't see a lot of that. I didn't see a lot of the helmet guy. Watch a lot of the other guy, and I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't know if this was like, oh, this was actually a concept episode, and we were actually setting up the evil lady in this episode so that we could kill this guy and oops, that's actually not who we're. Or was he in previous episodes? I don't exactly know.
Yeah, he was in, I believe, 1 or 2 episodes at the very, very beginning of the entire series.
Okay.
He was the cartoonishly evil scientist who wanted who we now know as Grogu so that he could carve him up and figure out what magic sauce he's made of or whatever.
And it seemed like he invented cloning technology, which is used poorly by the Empire.
Yes. Cloning, and this is one of those things where it's like, I don't know how much is book canonical versus cartoon canonical or prequel canonical. Also don't care. Here's what I know is it's pretty clear in this episode that cloning anything has a stigma to it, right?
Absolutely.
So in the books, in the expanding universe, the way they represented that was that's the reason, like, for example, Luke Skywalker gets his hand chopped off, and they don't grow him a new hand because that would be cloning, which has a stigma around it. Instead, they put a robot thing on it, and you watch him have a robot hand.
And TF87 in our chat is reminding us he was never evil. He was never evil. He certainly seems genuinely interested in using this technology for the betterment of the New Republic is what it is,
right.
Where the other character maybe seems to have some subterfuge going on for maybe some almost like dog whistly stuff. I thought it was a really interesting conversation where she goes, more people than you would know would want this stuff, or whatever she said, like this.
Yeah, the way I read it, and what works for Andor for me is that Andor could not even be in space. It could be 1936 or whatever in Germany, and you all you need to know is that there's some party that is aggressively taking on territory and being in charge of things, and all things being equal, if you want to get along, you probably ought to just go along with whatever's happening here. That's Andor.
Okay.
This seems to be post-war, and the guy who is the focus of this episode seems to be straight up like Werner von Braun. Von Braun was the guy that...
A Nazi scientist.
Yes, correct. One of many who, whoopsie doodle, they were on the wrong side of history. And the United
And I thought
States,
they did a good job of like trying to show a perspective like that with the Amnesty crew.
Yeah. Well, and also it's like that general statement, I think was very well put. Look, I don't love the politics, but boy, do I miss the work. And boy, do I miss making progress on this project or whatever.
Sure.
Like, that's straight up somebody who made the V2 rocket finding himself at NASA.
Well, so let's talk about that, right? Because our lead character in the majority of this episode very much wants to continue using this technology that all of the official higher up forces are saying, no, we are destroying all of this technology. We are throwing the baby out with the bathwater. This is the decision. Well, who do you think was right here? Because our main character clearly sees a lot of advancement that can come out of using cloning technology, stem cell technology, Nazi technology, whatever you want to call it. But there are also there are clearly subversive elements that would like to use this for empire-style fascism.
This is part of why I'm being seduced back to the Mandalorian, is because as an American, I think we all have a lot of pride in the Apollo project and the fact that Americans went to the moon and all that stuff. But also that was born of collecting a bunch of intelligent humans who, whoopsie doodle, were Nazis. And it's not shoved in our faces at all, but it's like I feel that confusion, and it's delightful to me. I really enjoyed it. What was it like to not know jack about this series and find yourself, because it sounds like you figured out the same thing as I did.
Yeah, I mean, it's you can pick up a ton of it from context clues, right? Especially knowing a little bit about the story, right? It's not Boba Fett and baby Yoda, and now there's a new lady, and they're all on the same team, and they took off their helmets and they put them back on, and they got baptized again. That all makes a lot of sense, which is maybe why it's good that stuff was the framing device of this other story, kind of bookending it.
Yeah, like to be honest, barely remembered either of the bookends. Like the story was, oh my God, are they being all Andor up in this? What is happening? This is amazing.
So how do you feel about what we see at the end, the end of the central story, the mind flaying of our central character?
Is he the Mandalorian or the torture of that guy?
Yeah, the torture of our guy.
To be honest, I have literally no idea.
Is he disposable? Should we care for him to come back? I know you mentioned he might have.
I sure hope they don't, because this is far and away the most interesting Mandalorian episode that I've seen in it's more interesting than anything in the second season or anything that has started in the third season.
Yeah. Okay. Well, any other thoughts here on The Mandalorian 303?
I was made uncomfortable by the idea of essentially a more cartoon characterized version of what I love about Andor, and so I don't know how I feel about that. I'll have to process that. We'll see how you do, Mandalorian. Give me more. I would like to subscribe to your Substack.
Okay, there we go. That's The Mandalorian, episode 3 of season 3. Let's wrap up the rest of this with Picard, Star Trek Picard, season 3, episode 5, Imposters. Now, do you mind if I come at this one first? Because I did watch the first episode of the season, and I've now watched this fifth episode of the season. Those are the only Picards I've watched.
Wait, total? Full stop?
Total, full stop.
Oh, Bryce. Bryce.
Okay, keep it in your pants.
Okay, go ahead. Every word. Give me.
It's the first episode, and I talked about this a little bit back on Spoilerin time, but the first episode makes it very clear with context clues. This guy, former admiral, whatever, going into space, whatever, stealing a ship, whatever. And this fifth episode, I think, does a good job of saying, okay, we have a problem. There was probably 3 or 4 episodes in the middle of this that didn't really matter very much, but we got a problem. There's a lot of shapeshifters. We got a lot of the things in Starfleet. And only you and your squadron of people who were off the books for 10 years are safe enough to weed them out. I thought it was great. The only thing is I kind of just wish they were a little smarter. There was a point where I was like, everyone keeps saying shapeshifters or what is it? Was it changelings?
Changelings.
And I just keep going like, okay, so like they're changelings, except all of the stimuli that you use to determine if it's a changeling is different. So maybe it's not just a totally different thing. I don't know. I don't know enough Star Wars to say like.
You are correct in that they took about 1 minute to explain to everybody who's a Star Trek fan. Yes, we all know the previous lore.
Right.
These are new rules.
There was a lot of that.
Rules.
Blood.
They have all the organs, and none of the tricks that you saw on the old show are going to work anymore.
Yeah. I kind of like that. You're shaking your head.
No, I'm nodding. I'm
nodding.
with you.
That's
Yeah, it's great.
And I really like where we set off by the end of this, where the ship is off. We're on the run from the cops, and we've got to find a way to stop the president and all of his cronies, or whoever's the big bad guy is here, right? If it's changelings or Cylons or whoever knows what it is.
Did they in this episode explain? They've hinted in the last couple episodes that there's something curious about Picard's kid, Jack.
They leaned into that a lot with the visions.
Yeah, but no explanations, right?
No, they tried to, his whole role this week was to Three's company it, to put himself in the awkward position of being like, okay, we need you to find the Nazis, hair Nazi. There is a little bit of that because we don't exactly know, at least to me, if Jack is also a changeling or if he's a different thing.
Last episode, I was led to believe, oh, that's what those crazy flashes are. He is a changeling. But this episode, they kept leaning into it.
And it seemed like
so
he was
much
not there.
So that it made me pull back from that thesis.
Yeah, but they otherwise didn't explain it. I guess there will be. That's where a lot of the conflict from the rest of the season will be. We're doing Among Us, Brian. Picard season 3. We're doing Among Us.
Yes, that's exactly what we're doing, and I'm totally here for
and
it.
It totally works.
Are you going to keep watching it with Tom and I for the rest of the season?
I'll give it a shot. I'll give it a shot. What did you no? So the other thing I got is the B story here. This Worf,
hippie
planet
Worf
side thing.
I have no idea what they're doing with hippie Worf. Whatevs. Rafi. I have no attachment to Rafi. I'm curious about hippie Worf. I have no idea. I have no justification. I have no explanation.
Was it out of character as much as it seemed to be for Worf to do the fake out with the fight and the fake death?
Well, Worf's character in the original
death and honor and death.
Correct. Was like quite literally. I think you can find a supercut of like every time they encounter an alien, he says, "We should attack immediately." so I think they're going against the stereotype of Worf in a hard way, which we'll see whether or not it works or whether or not we believe it. But I don't know. I'm willing. Give me a pamphlet on hippie Worf.
And Ken from Chicago is saying that this is the point where that Worf storyline is connecting up with Picard's story, right? Because they end up on, don't they end up at the ship at the end?
Wait,
or maybe not.
Which
Worf,
ship?
The not the Intrepid, but the one that Picard and
Titan?
Riker. Sure.
Yeah.
I don't know.
These are all
okay.
Oh, if only Tom was still with us.
Please email us in.
But by the way, we talked about this on Weird Things, but there's the new Chat GPT, and I asked Chat GPT to pretend to be an AI from a book that I enjoyed very much. And as I was role-playing with the AI, I realized, oh my God, this is exactly what every holodeck episode of Star Trek The Next Generation was.
Yeah. In fact, I thought the holodeck moment was kind of fun. I thought that was an interesting way to ease this tension between, okay, who is this shapeshifter, to, okay, we're begrudgingly trusting each other, even outside of that scene. Like, I thought that was a great bit of, how did the... Like, I could tell there's history between these characters, and I got plenty in context clues. But
the current captain that takes over control at the end?
No, the former captain who goes into the holodeck with Picard. Then they have that conversation over the bar. He turns on the music so that they can, because that's where she tells him about all the shapeshifters. The crux of the story.
Doggone it.
Oh, no.
Don't do this.
Okay, it's fine.
Hey.
Okay. Well, Ro. I'm told it's Ro.
Ro Laren. Okay.
Yes,
okay.
Ro
all
McLaren.
right. So, okay. Now I know what you're talking about. So Ro Laren showed up, and she was.
Did her history help you?
She showed up in one of the later seasons of The Next Generation. She was a Bajoran. There's a whole thing where it's like there were Cardassians and Bajorans, and they were basically an analog for Palestinians and Jews trying to live, arguing over who can live where, and two-state solution and all that stuff. Look, okay,
yes,
you open
Israel,
this.
Palestine.
You open this.
Yeah, I'm just saying, get past Palestine, please.
Right. Anyway,
Did knowing her history help you in this scene? Did it make it better that they had this big emotional, distrusting relationship in that?
I would say yes, because I actually, watching that moment, I was like, oh, from what I remember of the original series, would it be absolutely outrageous for her to be, a wild terrorist fringe figure or a changeling pretending to be her or whatever? And anything was on the table. So I genuinely did not know until near the end that it's like, oh, no, wait, it's definitely the real Rollaren, and they definitely, she seems to understand exactly what the landscape looks like.
Good. Well, I'm glad to hear that, because I picked up you pick up a lot of the context clues, not I don't know TNG or any of this other stuff, but that they did a good job of setting up the conflict of the broad strokes of it. And I think a silver lining about not actually knowing her history was still having some of that the doubt of like, okay, is this, I guess I'll trust you. And I guess maybe Picard feels a certain amount of that as well.
She was always kind of a morally gray character in the original show. So as a result, like it was earned. Her ambiguity was earned.
How do you think the season ends? Is there like one changeling hive mind, or is it changelings too? The changelings.
If I get my way, the way it ends is the way I wanted season 1 to end, which is
the AI thing.
Picard uploading his consciousness into a ship and continuing to quote unquote be on the show forever. All I know is right now they're doing the Next Generation, and it's great. I love it. There's nothing I'm not enjoying about it.
All right, well, that's Picard, episode 5 of season 3. That'll do it for Spoilerin Time today. You can join us anytime over at Cordkillers.com. That's where we've got episodes of Cordkillers, and it's Spoilerin Time. And of course, if you want to support us and this whole dang thing that we're doing, please go over to Patreon, patreon.com/Cordkillers. That is where you can get access to our After Talk exclusively. You can get earlier access to the Spoilerin Time here. You can support cord killing of all shapes and sizes. Patreon.com/Cordkillers. Thank you so much for Spoilerin. We've been Spoilerin.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.